Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jason Bowler. I'm your host of Toma. This is episode 19. So let me ask you, hopefully you listened to episode 18 and you thought, okay, you did the strength audit. You looked at the 5 domains and you found the ones you want to work on the most after scoring each 1 through 5. You maybe found some twos, some threes, possibly even some ones. And then you narrowed your focus and you thought, okay, this is the one I'm going to work on, or maybe the two at most. Remember, we don't want to try to attack all 5 at one time. And you said, okay, this is where I'm going to focus going forward. I'm going to improve my emotional state. I'm going to improve my mental state or physical, whatever you decided to do. All right. And then you get fired up. You got a plan, you're ready, you're motivated, you're going to start today, and then something happens. Something happens that you didn't expect to happen. After all, you're still motivated, right? Most people stay motivated in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you freeze. Well, today's episode is called The Resistance because that, my friends, is what you're dealing with right now. If you're in this phase of just not being able to move forward, that is the resistance. And it is not what you think it might be. See, resistance isn't loud or dramatic. It's not someone kidnapping you on the way to the gym and forcing you to go to the donut store and get 15 donut holes. That's not how it works at all. It's very subtle. It's very quiet, but it's also very convincing. It's up to us to recognize what it is and correct ourselves before we start drifting again. So, what is resistance? What does that mean? Well, first we have to distinguish what is actual resistance and what is a symptom. So, a symptom is procrastination or lack of motivation. That's a symptom. Resistance is the internal pushback that happens the moment that you decide you want to change, the moment you decide that you start getting clarity in your life about what you want to be, the moment you start to commit and start to push forward, that's when you meet the resistance. The moment you say enough is enough, the resistance is going to creep in. And it's not your fault. It's not unique to you. It's built in everyone's DNA because change equals discomfort, and discomfort, going way, way back to the dinosaur days, is a sign of danger. Our brain tells us that we're in danger when we're squatting a heavy weight and that we haven't done this in a while and we feel like we're going to be injured or something along those lines. It's called playing it safe. And why do people play it safe? Well, because they think there's danger on the other side of not playing it safe. I would say it probably goes back to the freaking dinosaur days when we're all hiding in the cave at night around a warm fire away from the big toothed dinosaurs so that we don't get our asses eaten up. So at least we can see when we got to get out during the day, but we play it safe. We stay in the cave. And that's kind of how we operate now. Funny story about playing it safe. I used to be deathly afraid of having a heart attack. When I was obese, I thought I was going to have a heart attack if I tried to run. Like if my heart rate started getting up just a little bit, thought I was going to die. Well, that could have happened because I was obese. But at the same time, obviously check with your doctor first, but sitting on the couch being afraid of having a heart attack while you eat 3 buckets of Haagen-Dazs or whatever, probably going to get you to a heart attack a lot faster than running, which is going to build the muscles in your heart and decrease the chance of a heart attack. But I had this crazy fear, and I guess that was my resistance, that I was going to fall out freaking dead if I tried to go run a mile or so. So just something to be aware of, and that's how comfort works. Sometimes resistance hides and it shows up in sneaky ways, like it shows up in the form of rationalization. So I've already done more than most guys do. Why do I need to keep going? Like why raise the standard? I'm already doing pretty well. So there's no point in continue moving forward. This one kind of hits home for me because I can just about rationalize anything in the world. We aren't always right as we think we are when we try to do this, but sometimes you'll rationalize not exercising for a day, which turns into 2 days, which turns into 3 days, so on and so forth. So be careful of rationalization because that rationalization is a sneaky one. And then there's sudden fatigue. Like you weren't tired last week. You weren't any more tired than any other week. and now all of a sudden you're exhausted. You can't do anything. That's just you're not burnt out. You're just avoiding getting moving. And remember that 2-minute rule. Some people say 5-minute rule. Some people say 1-minute rule. If you start something you don't really want to do and you can do it for a couple minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, say, then all of a sudden you start getting momentum and you will continue to do it more often than not. The movement will create the energy to see it through. If you wake up tired and you let it win, then you're going to be tired all day long. I know I am. On days that I've decided I was going to skip a workout because I was tired, those were days that I felt worse as the day went on. Like I was more tired. Like I felt like the whole day had been wasted. Now, if I get up and I am tired and I go ahead and I work out or do what I need to do, for some reason I get a jolt of energy, and that's really how it works. So there's no reason not to do that. And then you got to be careful of delay logic, which is I'll start Monday and then Monday becomes February and then February becomes next year and next year becomes never because you keep on putting things off, putting things off, putting things off. And then one that a lot of people don't talk about is identity confusion. We're so in the older we are, especially middle-aged men, we get so ingrained in who we are, and who we are really is how we think the world sees us. And how we think the world sees us, it becomes our identity. And it's not always the best identity, but it's the one we're most familiar with. So if I was the fat guy who could pound 12 or 14 beers, cuss like a sailor, raise 9 kinds of hell, and party like a rock star at 45 years old, and my friends seem to enjoy that and get a kick out of that, then I was afraid to be someone else. But here's the thing, the first person you owe is you. So if you don't feel comfortable being that person anymore, you need to change. The second people you owe are your family. If your family would prefer a better version of you, then you owe it to them to try to be that better version. And then comes your friends. And when it comes to your friends, you'd be surprised how many of them will be super proud of you for that change. They will accept that change because whether you know it or not, a lot of your friends truly love you for who you really are. They see you for who you really are. And you've just been thinking that you have to be somebody else to impress them. That's not necessarily the case. And the so-called friends that are left over that do get pissed off because you're changing for the better, they were never really your friends to begin with, and you probably need to cut ties with them. Which leads to strangers. Look, I had my first like smart ass comment on TikTok the other day, and the only reason I use TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, any of that is to get the word out about this podcast. This is my passion. This is what I want to do, but you got to play the game. You got to get people to come. You got to try to get people to listen. Otherwise, you're just talking into a mic and nobody's out there. It's falling on deaf ears. Play the social media game. And with that is going to come a little bit of pushback. There's always going to be someone that just has to come on there and make some kind of smart ass comment. What that person or future people that may do that may not realize about the Toma mindset is that they will not get a response from me because I do not care what they think. And it's not because it's negative. I don't care really what anybody thinks when it comes to my journey in my life and trying to help other people and trying to improve myself and hopefully get other people to improve themselves. The mission is more important than what other people think about it, especially strangers. So if you feel it's important to lose weight, to get in touch with your spirituality, to try to get your mental game on point, then it really doesn't make a shit what anybody else wants. That's just a fact. Just remember that the old version of you is not going to go quietly into that good night. That little devil on your shoulder, he has a saddle, he has spurs, his ass is dug in, and you can't shake him off. He's not going anywhere, right? And he's sneaky with that. He'll fight you back with logic. He'll try to use logic against you. He'll try to be emotional with you. He'll try to nostalgia. He'll bring up some nostalgia stuff. Oh man, remember how fun it was to sit out at the bar by yourself and watching football and smoking cigars and pounding beers. And then it'll use fear combined with realism or dressed up as realism, like the sudden heart attack from walking around the block that I was so afraid of. And if you don't expect that to happen, if you're not prepared to meet that challenge and have that conversation with that little devil and put the tape over his little mouth and shove his ass in the trunk somewhere, he's going to talk you into quitting. So you have to know ahead of time that that's coming, right? If you're prepared for the battle, then it's easier to win it. I'll just say that. If you don't know you got an enemy coming after you, like ambush style, then obviously your chances of winning the battle are decreased, right? But if you know, if you're cock blocked and ready to rock, and you know it's coming, you have a better chance of overcoming that. But that is also part of the resistance. The little devil is the general on on the shoulder of resistance, trying to put an end to you. So it's really all about ownership. The cost of ownership that you're going to initially have to have an internal fight with yourself day in and day out until the good guy wins, um, or at least silences the bad guy. So you need to forget about outside forces. Most people don't really care what you're doing as much as you think that they do. Like I said, I was worried to death about losing friends. I don't feel like I've lost any friends. However, I've had some friends that kind of ghosted me over the years who have now come back into the fold and have reached out to me. I very much appreciate that. You know, I started calling this thing too old my ass. I've since changed it to taking on middle age just because it was a little more family friendly, I guess, even though I'm still dropping some curse words in here on occasion. I don't do it just because I think I'm cool doing it. It's just how I talk. Former sailor, former soldier is what it is. But having said that, having named it taking on middle age, you know, I've heard from a lot of former students who are not middle age yet, and they're getting a lot out of this. And I don't know that those former students would have reached out to me had I not started changing my life and putting a positive message out there. I may have never heard from them. So I'm not losing friends by getting better. I'm actually gaining relationships by getting better. And I very much appreciate that. So things you need to look out for: your self-destructive yet very pleasurable coping mechanisms. If you have coping mechanisms for a hard day or a hard week or a tragedy or something at work, if your coping mechanism for that is something that you know is self-destructive, then you got to be ready to fight on that front. You've got to be ready because life is going to happen. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. You may be going through something really terrible, a death, a divorce, or whatever. And that's when the coping mechanism's really going to start rattling in your ear. And you just have to be able to overcome that. And this is mostly initially, 'cause it does get better. If you go so long without drinking, or you go so many days where you're putting in exercise every day to the point where you feel weird if you don't exercise, if you go so long without eating sweets, then all of a sudden something really bad happens. You don't even think about those old vices as your coping mechanism anymore. But initially, that's the first thing you're gonna think of. Even subconsciously, you're gonna be thinking of, how do I get my hands on a beer or a piece of pie or whatever it is that you normally use to cope with? So you need to understand that that's part of the resistance too. And so do your best to stay away from that. Also, comfort and pleasure tricks us into thinking that any kind of change is a threat. So be aware of that. Fearing the worst, failure. So after 365 days of not drinking, this podcast is kind of me going on the offensive against failure, because this whole thing could turn out to be total crap. Nobody ever listens to it. I never get more than 20 followers, but I have committed in my mind to a certain amount of time that I'm going to do this and try to get better each time, because I am not afraid of failure. The old me would have been so afraid of failing, so afraid of the embarrassment of it or what other people would think, that I wouldn't have dared done this. Now, the really old me, the person I've gotten back to, is the guy that would get up on stage in school plays and act a fool and lead sing in a rock band at the prom. I did not care what people thought, and then I lost that. And now I'm trying to get it back. So this is my mission for the year, is to just continue doing this. So find something that scares you and just freaking do it. If people don't like it, who cares? Like, what do you care, right? And then imposter syndrome. And this is what happens if you really do start to look better, feel better, act better, have a successful podcast, have a successful business, anything that you try to do to overcome fear and push through. And if it ends up being actually really good, then you're going to deal with imposter syndrome, which is, if I deserve this, who am I to have this success? Well, let me tell you who you are to have this success. If you work for it, then you're exactly the person who deserves to have a success. And no one can tell you any different. So you're not an imposter. If you put the work in and you do it, whatever it is you're trying to do, then you deserve the benefit or the rewards that come with that. It's just that simple. And then running someone else's race. Comparison is the thief of joy, I think they say. Look, some people are going to naturally lose weight faster than you, even if y'all start at the same time, you and a buddy take on a Biggest Loser challenge or whatever. Some people are going to get their stuff together or have success in whatever they're doing faster than you are. We're not in a race. The only person we're going against is ourselves, right? So you cannot let that bring you down. It's not a race. You're not running their race. You're running your race. Just remember that your mind has a tendency to either fixate on the past, which is depression, worry fiercely about the future, which is anxiety, or it can be in the present, which is the hardest place for us to keep our brains, but is also the place where joy comes from. If you live in the present, if you live in the moment, if you live one push up at a time, one day without alcohol at a time, one day eating right at a time, then you're doing what you need to be doing. But if you're thinking about what may happen down the road or all the awful stuff that may have happened before, then resistance is going to creep back in. Let's talk about the move that beats resistance. You can't do it with motivation. You can't do it with hype. You can't really even do it by arguing with it. You have to recognize and then take action. Recognize when resistance comes and then take immediate action to stomp it out. That's it. So as soon as that alarm goes off and your brain starts to tell you to hit the snooze button, jump up. As soon as you tell yourself, I don't need to run today, put your shoes on and go right then. The faster you do it, the less chance resistance has to get you. So you just got to keep moving no matter what. And this is why we're going to talk about it next week. We're going to continue this before we have our first guest on Toma. We're going to talk about the fight within, because once resistance shows up, you realize something uncomfortable is that the enemy is not out there. The enemy's inside of us. It's very familiar to us. It knows our voice. It knows how to work us. So if January is starting to slip through your fingers, or if it's ever slipped through your fingers when you've made some sort of resolution or decided you wanted to do something, this is the week it usually happens. The way around that is you don't negotiate, you don't try to explain, you don't wait, you recognize resistance for what it is, and then you move. You move anyway. This is Toma taking on middle age. We'll see you next week.